Okay, thank you so much, Rick, for give the remark on behalf of Senator Maria. So next, we are very honored to have our keynote speaker today, Mac Miller. Mac Miller, he is the Vice President of Transmission Engineering and Technical Service from BPA. So we are very honored to have you here today. So his presentation is about leading the next electric revolution.
All right, thank you. Oh, I see slides. This is good. Sorry for all the early speakers that didn't get to see. But I'm going to show you something because this is what you do when you know things can go wrong. Bring printouts just in case. Yeah. That's 32 years of utility experience. Oh, that's so good. Excellent. And okay, I'm going to hold this because it's a little bit easier for me. So thank you. Exciting to be here today. And I haven't been able to attend this in the past. I haven't been invited. But now I'm invited, and I plan on coming every year. But yeah, it's a great thing. And this will be light because as I'm looking around the room and I prepared my slides, I was hoping for less people that looked like me. But then I see Larry here, who is actually older than me. And I think, so all of you folks that are my age, you can just nod your heads with some of the things I bring up because, you know, it will bring you back to the good old days a little bit. But first, a couple of things. This is an inspirational day. I read through a lot of the stuff that we are going to get presented today and looked at the people that are here, and it's a pretty cool day. So I love this quote just because it is what we all do. We all are trying to find a way to make the invisible visible and prepare everyone for the new future coming. So I like that one. This slide is just to show and make sure people realize that, and this is just a tiny sample, but you know, we have some really amazing folks in the room. So when we have breaks, and I didn't see hardly any on the agenda, by the way, but when we have breaks, you know, meet with people, come talk to me. I'd love to talk to you because we learn something from one another, and it's a pretty cool thing. So a couple of goals for me today, two only, so this is easy. One, I want to talk about the mission that we're all dealing with today. And then two, when I do things in my own work, I tend to want to also say there are ways of how we should do things. So it's not just about what you do, but it's about how you do it. And that's a little bit of the leadership side. And I certainly don't claim to be a great leader, but I work hard every day to be a better leader, and that's a key. And I do want to just say a couple more things before I move on to the core of this, which is my organization and a little bit about kind of what we do, just to make sure everyone knows what Bonneville Power Administration is. You know, we're the bulk power provider in the Northwest. I have a few customers here of our power, but my organization specifically is Transmission Engineering and Technical Services. So that means all the folks that do the designs, all the folks that do the project management for a capital program that used to be around $400 million a year. And this year, we're going to crest about $650 million a year. And then very shortly, we're going to get over the billion mark, and some of which I blame Larry for as well. But that's kind of what I'm talking about today, is the speed at which we are flying into a future that is difficult to see or anticipate. And nothing you all don't already know, but I'm just going to give you my perspective on it. And so I'm going to transport you back to 1985. Some of you were around in 1985. Some of you were not. And so I know you're thinking to yourself, why did he put a current picture of himself up there with the mullet and those were good days. But that's me in 1985. So slightly different than I am today. That was my telephone in 1985. And I remember, for any of you who don't know, you used to stick your finger in and rotate the thing around. It's pretty cool. You probably pay $1 million for that telephone. This was our TV, right? It had an antenna on the top, right? I remember when we got cable and MTV started, and oh, those were good days. But this was what we had, little tiny TVs. But most importantly, this was my computer. And it was the first computer I got in 1985, Intel 8088 processor, no software whatsoever. You just programmed in BASIC. That is what we did. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And that was where the paleness came from, because I just stayed inside and worked on the computer all the time. So unfortunately now I've been out too much and get skin cancer and those guys. I should have just stayed around the computer. But yeah, this is 1985. So this is just to give you an idea of what was happening 40 years ago, right? So the reason for that is electronics loads. And at that time, right? So at that time, 8.2 U.S. households had computers, 8.2%. So you think about that and you think, wow, I was in the 8.2%. That's because no one had any interest in having a computer, because there was no reason to own one. 0.1% had cell phones. I didn't know any of those people. And there was no internet. Right. And we all know that. You think about that. But, it's just so integrated into everything we do today that you just don't think about the time when we didn't have internet. And then today, right, it's everywhere. Everyone has a cell phone. Probably some of us have two of them in our pockets like I do. Everybody has internet access. And so it's a huge transformation. Why does this matter? Everything consumes electricity. And, in the old days, we had other fuels that we used in our homes and businesses, including oil. I remember a lot of oil heat and watching them bring the truck in and dump it down into the basement of the home. Crazy. But that was kind of what we had, And so as all these other fuels are shrinking, electricity is becoming the only fuel we're using. So I also think about 1985. Aluminum smelters was the major consumer of electricity as well as manufacturing. And, I always love aluminum smelters. They just jam one phase of electricity right into a giant pot and melt a bunch of aluminum. It's insane, and it does really bad things to the power system. But I remember it. I started in Bonneville in 1992 as a student, and this was the loads we were serving at that time. It was really a different time. And then today, chip manufacturers, data centers. So you think about the amount of space it takes to put up, microchip manufacturer or a data center. You can do a whole lot of those, as opposed to this one giant aluminum plant that, consumed a lot of electricity, but nothing compared to what we can do today. And then you think about the other side, generation, right? Coal, natural gas, that was really where we were at. Today, coal is shrinking slowly, but it is shrinking. Natural gas, and then we got a ton of renewables out there. So, a lot of that is changing drastically. And why does this matter to any of us? Well, it matters to me because of location, right? Because in the old days, when we had coal, oil, natural gas, you used to get the stuff from where it was, take it to where you needed to generate it, and then generate your electricity. Whereas today, wind, solar, wave energy, all this stuff happens where it is, and now we got to build transmission lines to bring it to where you need it, right? So it's a very, very different thing. And from my side of the business, this means tons and tons of builds. And it means tons and tons of money and lots of people. I have an organization today that's a little over 700 people to do just the design and procurement, as well as I have labs, by the way. So if any of you are interested in coming down, high voltage, medium voltage, mechanical labs, you should come to Bonneville. It's a great place. So what's driving the growth? Obviously climate change. We won't worry too much about that because you all know. And the location thing is a big one, and it's just not something that people think about that much. But it's a lot of what we need. But the other side, artificial intelligence, which we also all know about. But that massive need for computers and the ability to process that amount of information and store it and do the things we need to do, it's evolved massively just in the last few years. And then now you think, how quickly is it going to evolve going forward? So that was boring. But I felt like I had to kind of give a base for what we're talking about. So it'll get more interesting, I swear to you. But the point is massive transformation, right? In a fairly short period of time. I think 40 years when I think about it, because I'm 53, which I know you're like, wow, really, you look like 35. But yeah, 53. And you got through that time, and now we can connect anyone to anywhere, right? It's amazing. Sometimes not great because you have the phones with you, and then they call you, and I just want to be left alone. But the point is, what does the future look like? If that could happen in 40 years, if I could have a dial phone and I could have a computer that I had to program all my own software for, and then today we have everything we have, what does 40 more years look like? And probably more importantly, what does 20 years look like? Because I think the pace of transformation is much quicker. So who knows what it's going to look like is the point. And why does this matter to us? Well, because everyone in this room, right, is in the middle of this. And the folks who are not like me, who are within somewhat of a timeline of retirement, not close enough. But all you folks that are going to be left dealing with this stuff, it's going to be on you, right? And it's going to take you being able to see that invisible future and anticipate it. And it's funny because I have spent a lot of time in this business, obviously, and look back and I think, oh man, if I could have just done that. Larry and I were talking in the hallway, and we had a few moments where it's like, why didn't we just build that 10 years ago? Because it would have been a lot less expensive 10 years ago. Now we're worried about how expensive it is. It's a big deal. So this is just my way of looking at it. But we have to come together to find that unknown future that we have. So it's ticking. We got to move. We're going to move fast, and it's going to take all of us. So, I think that's the thing, is that we got to inspire people. Everyone in this room is already a leader, right? You're here because you got into a program. You're working in the business. It doesn't matter if you manage people, right? People are looking up to you at this point. So now we need to turn around to those folks that are just coming into Wazoo or anything like that and carry them along, right? And inspire them to stay in the business, because I'll tell you what, I can't hire enough people in my organization. It does not happen. And I'm sure you're like me. Electrical engineers, it sounds sexy, I know, but this is what it looks like. So I don't know what to tell you. It ain't easy. So there's half of what I wanted to get through today. The second half is quicker, so don't worry. I know people down here are like, stay on time. But we will. We're good. The second part of this is about leadership, and I think it's important. I try to talk about it every time I speak. I have some things that guide me in my leadership. They're not perfect. They change. They evolve. But I think it's important for us to all think about things before we do them. So, what skills do you need, in my opinion, to inspire people to lead the next generation? And I say, be a hippo. And that probably makes no sense to you. It's like, well, I always think of a hippo, like they're very cute little ears, but then they will kill you in an instant. So don't be like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, be a hippo because I made a little thing out of it that I have been living by for a while now. And I really think it's important. I think you don't have to have this thing be your thing, but you have to have something be your thing. You know what I mean? Don't just do what you do every day. And then at the end of the day, think to yourself, man, I wish I would have thought about the way I did that. Do it because you have thought about it ahead of time. So I'm going to walk through these real quick because I think it's kind of important. And, you know, honesty, obviously, is the key to build integrity. So you know, I can't honestly say I'm not honest all the time. I am married, and sometimes it's not a good idea to be honest. I've learned that. I've been married for 30 years, and you know what? My wife does not want me to be honest all the time. I don't want her to be honest all the time, right? But in business, in what we do, you got to just have a base of being honest because you got to build trust. And you know, I think about the people I've known in this room, and I think about folks as I've gone through my 32 years, and I think, man, I wish I would have done some things differently in my past. But having a base that says, number one, start with honesty. Two, intentional, right? Plan before you do something. Don't just walk in. You know, like yesterday, I got into town. I put my stuff in the hotel. I drove to this campus because that's kind of the way I am. I just wanted to make sure I knew where I was going, right? You know, and then, of course, I may have had to text somebody to say, what building is it in? But yes, thank you. But, you know, it's the planning part. It's the thinking before you do it, right? And then you have values, I have values. Act in alignment with your values. It's a big deal. Be present. Right? We all hear this all the time. The newer generations are actually getting better at this. Yeah, I have Gen Zers that I'm raising, and they're better at not being on their phones than actually my generation and the one in the middle. So it's funny, but you know, it's not just all about phones. It's think about where you're going and be there for a reason. You know, and then set aside time to do the phone things and the computer things and the other stuff. But, you know, when I'm at home with my family, that's where I want to be. Put the phones away. I have not always been like that, right? And it takes actual intentional thought to get yourself there. But it's worth it. And you know what? Those people won't miss you that are on the other side of that. Be productive. None of this matters if you don't actually act. And that part can be the harder part for me. And then the last part is kind of funny because unfortunately it's true. Measure what you do. Did it actually happen if you don't have something that showed that it happened? But it's very true. You know, I get that all the time from my bosses at work when I say, hey, man, we did an amazing thing. I spent over $650 million on capital. And they say, what did we get for the $650 million, right? If I don't have all of these projects to show, that may not be a good thing. Lastly, optimistic, right? I think it's a huge deal. It is a choice. I have known people, and I'm sure you all do too, in horrible situations in their lives who are happier than I am. Right. And I think, how is that possible? You know, it's just, but it is a choice. There are bad situations. There are good situations. You decide how you want to have them. I try to be optimistic. I'm going to tell you, I'm not a hippo all the time, but I try to do that. And more importantly, bring the people up around you. Right. Spend time finding ways to make people happy and bring them into where they should be. So join the bloat, something I didn't know until I made this thing up, which is a bloat is a gathering of hippos, like a murder of crows. It's another good one, right? That's the one I love. But yeah, you know, I just think it's important. I actually have a little hippo inside of my coat. And I do that because I could put it on the outside, right? But that would be like reminding you to do something. And that's like, there's no reason for me to do that. But for me, this reminds me. I put my coat on and I'm like, oh yeah, I shouldn't have lied to all those people. But you know, I think it's a big deal. I think have something that is your center, that is your inspiration. It's not going to be the hippo thing, right? Because that's my thing, and you're welcome to use it. But I bet you something more meaningful for yourself would be good. And I've done this my whole career. I've gone through many, many different things, but I have a few things that I always try to center myself on. And the biggest part is having something. So that is it. Thank you very much. Thank you.